it would actually make sense to talk about myself, but I don't exactly want to talk about my condition. My condition was mere child's play. It carries a bit of a stigma, but it's only in the sense that you actually don't want someone to be talking about it in your presence because you'd feel like they're talking about you or they are picking on you. So that's not that big a deal. There are people who actually have real problems. There are people who have real reproductive problems or impediments. So let's use the example of someone who's unable to essentially fertilize someone, to bear children, so to speak. I'd use the word fertilize because, well, I'm more into agriculture than biology, but damn it, that's neither here nor there. If you're unable to fertilize someone because your system is acting up, most of these issues come up because our systems are not functioning the way they are supposed to. There have been some flaws somewhere along the development line. It's not necessarily that you have poor genetics. No. You just had some factor come into play during your development. I certainly did have some factor come into play during my development and suffered the consequences for a couple of decades, but that's no biggie. What I'm trying to say is that most of these issues are actually correctable. You can correct most of them. The problem is that finding the right person to do the correcting, that's usually the hurdle. So there are a lot of people who are eager to essentially take your resources, take your money and such. So in the law of averages, when you're going out to look for a solution, you'll mostly run into these people. The best way for you to find a solution, a proper solution, is for the solution to find you. But based on your placement, you're not actually placed correctly in order for that solution to find you. What you are is you are in a sea of noise. So you'll hear a lot of noise. What is the way out? There is no way out. The way out is to go through them. You go through all the noise and then you'll find the solution. Eventually, you run into the solution. So I was asking someone, if you know that if you don't try this, you are going to die, and most of you tells you that this is a scam, what do you do then? To me, it seems like a clear choice, but not being scammed is actually a very deep and a very stigmatic thing. It's think of it like the biggest failure there can be. Someone being scammed is essentially the biggest failure they can imagine, because it takes giving away trust and then your trust being broken. So that is the biggest betrayal that any human can face. Being scammed is so deeply disturbing that someone would rather die than try out something that is sketchy. So you can't fault someone for not trying out a solution that you can, even if you assure them, even if you have some testimonial that this is the real deal. It's possible that the person would rather die than try out this thing, because there is a chance that they would get scammed, because that is the highest form of betrayal, like the Judas Iscariot level betrayal. And no human wants that level of betrayal, because I don't know why. It has been ingrained in us not to do that. Anyway, so this is where I tell you a personal story. This should have been a story on its own. There was a time I was trying to buy a phone. I wanted to buy the new phone. There was an iPhone 11, was it? Yeah, there was the 11. After the 10, the 11 came out with two versions. So there was the small 11, and then there was a 11 Pro Max. So the larger one, because the 10 didn't have a larger version. So the I think it was a 10s Max. Yeah, that was the one. It was a 10s Max, I think so. It wasn't 11, it was a 10s Max. So I wanted to get that one. And there was someone who claimed that they were selling theirs, and they seemed like they were. So it was a very sketchy price. It was like less than half of the real price of the thing. So I saw the information on Gigi and went for it. And before I went there, I actually knew that this was possibly a scam and I was going to get scammed. But I did go through the process anyway. I did get scammed, yes. It cost me like less than 40K, but I did get scammed for that. And it actually wasn't really a bitter lesson. What it was quite liberating. I had heard a lot of stories about these people having drugs and using some kind of magic to do their thing. There was no magic involved. It was essentially this. I went to the guy to... All right, let me start from the beginning so that I can tell the full story. There was an ad on Gigi. It was called OLX at the time. There was an ad on OLX. I saw a phone being sold. Someone said they are selling their phone. They have all the original documentation. I think this scam is still going on until today. You should be able to find them if you look on Gigi. I have the full original documents, everything original available, and you'd go meet the guy. So if you are not being quick about it, the guy would tell you, hey, unajua nimehepa job. He specifically uses those words. I think those are the most effective words to use. So he does that. Anyway, he did that, and then I told him I have to look it over. So we went to a restaurant, mkahawa. Went to a restaurant place where I checked out the phone and everything checked out. And I was super surprised that he would let me do all the checking. So I asked to put in my SIM card so that I can check whether it's working. I can make a call. He was very hesitant at first, but given that I explained that I just want to make sure that the phone is actually working in all ways, he let me do that. And then I tried to put in my iCloud account, which he stopped me from doing that. I also had wanted to pay him via M-Pesa. I'm not actually telling the story, I'm just recounting. Anyway, I think I'll tell you the story later on, so don't worry about that. We'll get back to it if it has some traction or some interest. We went to an M-Pesa shop to withdraw the money because he wouldn't take an M-Pesa transaction. Obviously, you'd say that's another red flag. I did too, but I did it anyway. So we went to an M-Pesa shop, I withdrew the money, and I gave him the money. While I was holding his phone, I actually used the new phone to withdraw the money. And I gave him the money. And then he started renegotiating or arguing about it. I don't know what he was saying. I think he wanted some additional money or something of the kind. So we had a little bit of a back and forth, and he kind of just stood firm until I gave him the phone back. So like, all right, here is your phone if you don't want it. So at that point I still had the money. I think he had refused the money, he wanted more of it. So at that point I still had the money, and I gave him his phone back. So I told him to give me my SIM card back. But then somehow he changed his mind and said, all right, we'll do this. Let's count the money. So I gave him the money, he counted it, he gave me the phone. Then he acted like he was calling in backup. Like, hey, yo, you up? So I ran off. After running off, I realized that I had been handed a different phone. It was a copy of the other one. So it kind of, at a glance, it would have looked similar, but it was a different phone. So that's how the scam happened. It wasn't really like, it didn't grate on me like it was the biggest betrayal that ever happened. Obviously, I was prepared for that. So I can't really speak to someone who's actually been scammed without ever having known or figured anything out, but it didn't grate on me. It was just a very disappointing experience, because I was expecting to be voodooed, but I wasn't voodooed. It was just a few misdirections, and the guy was actually tense the whole time, because when I was checking out the phone, he kind of actually had a tremble on his leg. His leg was kind of trembling. So he kept looking down on himself. We didn't even order anything at the restaurant place. So he was just sitting there. I think he was kind of nervous, very nervous actually. And I did pick up on that, but I ignored him. I was committed. I wanted the full experience. And I had the full experience. He actually saw the PIN code that I used while withdrawing from M-Pesa. So after he had gotten away with the phone, he actually went into my M-Pesa and withdrew the rest of the money. And he also withdrew from, I think, some M-Shwari. But the limit was actually quite low, so no big loss there. So that's how that happened. What it was mostly just a really big disappointment, because there was no voodoo involved. So that was very disappointing. I'm very disappointed in that scammer. He did not use any voodoo. I thought he would. There was another case where someone also tried to steal from me a laptop from me while I was in first year, but it didn't go through because I caught the guy. I also thought that those ones also have some voodoo, but they do not. They are just stealing. They are just using the normal trickery and misdirections. It's mostly about misdirection. Someone is just misdirecting you or playing to your inclinations. So if someone is talking about how they've run away from work, they've determined that you are the kind of person who likes to keep time, who likes to be on time and such, and to do things in a structured fashion. So if they tell you they've run away from work, you'd be inclined to push things through quicker so that you can get them back on there, so that they do not lose their job or something of the kind, or make things bad at work. I think that's what that all was. That's what that was about. I'm not sure. We would have to ask the scammer to know about that. What else? Yeah, that's about it. I did get a very disappointing experience, because there was no voodoo involved. I wish there was some voodoo, but there wasn't. I had a story about a guy who used to be quite the thief. So this story involved President Moi. President Moi had some, I don't know, a pen or something. So he said this scammer, if this thief can steal his pen, he'll give him some money. I think $1 million or something. It was back in the day, so $1 million was quite something. So the guy was able to steal his pen. I don't think there was any magic involved in that. It's just a little bit of misdirection. So if you're trying to ensure that something is not a scam, especially if you're finding it online, I don't exactly know what it is you're supposed to do. But there is something. There are some checks that you can perform. Maybe I could look into it. I'm not sure. But there is no voodoo involved. Someone is not going to voodoo you into, I don't know, selling your soul. I wouldn't say that I've had the most experience when it comes to getting scammed or getting voodooed. I've never been voodooed. Or maybe I have, because I had a problem and now I don't. So that could be considered as voodoo or science, because there are some synthetic solutions for the same. So you don't sell them. Don't go selling them to. Don't go giving them too much credit, because it starts with the herbals and then it is synthesized later on after the formula has been figured out. Anyway, the point I'm trying to make is that most of you are actually, I think, the primary reason behind this fear, or some of the reason behind this fear of getting scammed, could stem from the fact that you'd think that it was some kind of black magic that was put on you. or it's that kind of stain. But it isn't. Someone just played a trick. It's like when someone asks you to flip a coin and choose a side. When the coin flip is done, whether you pass or fail, it's all up to chance. So if someone manages to scam you, they just flipped a coin and won. There is nothing more to it than that. Obviously, you might have lost some resource, but that at the end of the day, you just lost a game of chance. That's all that's happened. I'm not trying to tell you to go out and get scammed. I have a friend who actually went out and tried to get scammed and didn't. So he was also very disappointed that that didn't happen. What a weird set of friends I must have. Anyway, so that's about it. This was supposed to be a good telling of a story because this is a story that I'm very intricately familiar with, but I didn't do any kind of justice to it. So I didn't tell the story as I should have. But if someone manages to watch this whole thing and gets to this part and is interested in the scam, then I would do a very good job of telling the story, because right now I don't have the audience. If I do have the audience, then we'll get on that. Why am I telling you about the scam? Probably because I saw someone talking about a scammer, someone who's stealing their videos and doing scams on the app TikTok. So I guess that's what has brought this on. But that's okay. Inspiration comes from everywhere, and that was my experience. And I was actually very eager to share because I knew it was a scam and I went for it. There are people who don't actually know that it's a scam and actually get scammed. I think that would give a very different feeling, and it could actually crush someone. You've seen people lose a great deal of their resource and they go crazy because of it. But if you're prepared and such, it's a very different experience. It's actually mostly just disappointing. You're disappointed that you have been short-handed because you didn't get the full experience of being voodooed. You did not get voodooed. So that's disappointing as well. And that's what's up. Can we talk about something interesting?